How are you doing? This is Martin from Gardens for Life again. We're going to answer the questions now. This is the third session of our questions and answers series. And today's topic is our plant nursery and plant propagation, basically. And we got a few questions, not as many as usual, but great questions all the same. Start with a very general question. A common question is, why do you grow your own plants? Well, the short answer is very simple: to save money, but also to have access to more variety of plants. A lot of plants are not available locally or from any nurseries. You have to purchase the seed and then grow them yourself, or even buy cuttings and then propagate them from cuttings. Sometimes it's just not possible, like the American elder, like I was showing you guys in the other video with the seeds that I was showing you of things that we're going to grow in 2020. And actually that's one of the things in the mystery box. If you haven't seen it yet, please do have a look at it. It's an hour-long video, so I'm sorry it's very long, but there's 200 seed packets in it. But another reason for growing your own plants is because it's much cheaper to buy seeds. I don't even see it as major money to be spent. It's not even an expense. It's just you're only spending about €1 or €2 for a packet of seeds, or sometimes €3 or €4, and you can grow hundreds of euro worth of plants out of each packet of seed. So it's not really an expense as such. You can grow more plants, and you can then expand your gardens an awful lot quicker if that's what you want to do. But you can at least, plant up your garden nearly in 1 year or 2 years, rather than waiting for year after year just to buy a few more plants here and there. But anyway, the main thing is to be able to grow what you like, what you want to grow, and grow lots of it so that you don't have a shortage. And if you have a surplus of plants, you can either sell those, or you can give them to your friends, or just go to a plant swap. In fact, we're going to have a seed swap soon now, and we're going to announce the details for that soon. And it'll be in March anyway, and maybe in April, possibly in April or May, we're going to have a plant swap as well. So everybody's welcome to attend those. These are free events, and we're going to fund them by running a raffle at the event. And yes, Robert asked the next question: do you make your own potting mix for starting seed or cuttings? And if so, what are the ingredients? If not, which potting mix do you get? Very good question. You need, if you're starting plants from cuttings or from seed, the seed and the cutting itself has a certain amount of fertility in it, stored in it, and that's what gets the plant off to a good start. Once it can establish its own little leaves, I don't remember the name for them. At the beginning of each plant, there's always 2 little small leaves before the true leaves come out, and those will give it a head start. And usually you want to keep the fertility as low as possible when you're starting plants from seed or from cuttings, because you want to prevent mold and mosses from growing, and also you want to prevent the seed from going rotten in your tray or in your flower pots that you're sowing them into. So basically, peat is actually a very good material to start with because it's actually antifungal, so you don't have any kind of mold problems usually. And there's no harm in using a small bit of peat. I know there's a big hysteria about it, but if you're starting off 500 plants using a bucket of peat, you're doing a good thing for the environment. Let's just face it. I mean, you're not burning it, so it's not going to get lost either. You're just going to basically plant what peat is actually in the root mass. You're going to put it out in the garden. And you can also use potting mixes. For example, any of the potting mixes from garden centres or Aldi or Lidl, they're only about €2 for 40 litres, or about a fiver for a bigger bag in a garden centre. Low fertility is key when starting off plants. A medium that holds the water. That's really important. You don't want high fertility because it causes the soil life to develop and actually rot away and eat away the actual start for the plant, basically. Same thing as tubers. You want to start the tubers in fairly low fertility or low fertile soil as well, in a greenhouse, just to keep them away from the slugs, really, and that's the main thing. Basically, that's all there is to it. Just buy any potting mix in one of the supermarkets or in the garden centre. We always like to support those too. On to the next question. Dolly asked, is it too late to divide rhubarb now? This is the middle of February. Ideally, you want to do it before the leaves start growing, before they start budding. There's a little, like you'll see, the leaves are kind of red at the start, budding out. And our rhubarbs have already grown a little bit. You could still divide them if you wanted to, and it wouldn't do much harm to the plant. You don't want to wait until the leaves are very large, but I would definitely suggest doing it in the middle of winter if you can. However, on the other hand, we've never divided rhubarb plants, even though we have some quite substantial rhubarb stools that are 35 litres in size when we dug them up. And we have transplanted them too from one house to the other when we were renting and then purchased the house. However, I wouldn't bother dividing rhubarb stools, because we just grow new ones from seed, or you can even buy the actual tuber, and you can buy them already 2 years old, so you'll get a produce basically in the first year nearly. But rhubarb plants always take a couple of years until you can start cropping them. So just remember that. And I find it much easier to just grow new plants from seed, because if you have a big rhubarb plant, you're going to get stalks coming out of all sides, and there's no harm. Just leave it be. But if you have to dig it up and you don't want to plant it all in one go, you can divide it with a very sharp spade. That'd be ideally, or with a shovel actually. But generally speaking, we don't bother. Robert asked another question here. Have you tried using biodegradable pots or soil blockers, are another method, or even plastic-free propagation methods? And if so, how did you find using them? We have tried almost every method, and actually it turns out using plastic trays is the most ecological and most economical way to go about growing your own plants. Get good quality, nursery quality style trays that are much better quality. It has to be black plastic that's UV treated and nice and thick and not go brittle after 1 year like the ones in the garden centres. Don't ever buy trays for starting seeds in the supermarkets or in the garden centre. You'll have to try to find them somewhere at higher quality. They're not necessarily more expensive, but they'll be definitely black and much thicker plastic than the ones in the garden centres, I found. And you can use those for 10 years or more, or maybe even forever, depending on how you treat them. And I find that using the biodegradable pots that are made from peat moss and all sorts of other materials, they're not very good, to be honest. They're just, they don't really degrade very well, and the roots get stuck. It gets pot bound in circles, and even though we've done everything it says on the manual for them or on the packaging, you water it in well and you let it grow, it's not worth using those biodegradable pots. They're a waste of time, to be honest, and also they block the roots for a substantial amount of time after actually planting the plant in your garden. So it takes too long for them to break down, basically. Soil blockers are as a method where you cut the soil. You basically take the soil and put it into a cube, and you cut it up with it's kind of a grate. I think it's a machine. There's different ways to do it. It's great and it works, but all you're really doing is trying to stop the roots from growing into each other, so that you're not damaging them when you pull them apart. So soil blockers can work fine for some crops, but I find that it's not really necessary to use them, and they can be quite messy. We need to get the consistency of the soil exactly perfect so that it's not too crumbly. We have another question from David. How long does it take for seeds to germinate when starting them in a greenhouse? Well, most seeds will germinate at the temperature of about 18 to 20 degrees or higher, Celsius, that is. And actually, red Russian kale germinates at 12 degrees Celsius. That's the lowest one, I think. And it grows at over 4 degrees Celsius. So that's one of the Siberian plants now. But most plants, especially the likes of fruits and tomatoes and cucumbers and courgettes and pumpkins, they need more than 20 degrees anyway, and constant moisture. You don't want your medium in your trays, to your growing medium, like the peat or potting mix, to dry out. You need to keep it wet. And there was actually a really nice trick that I learned from Hugh on YouTube. If you have your trays set up on your table in your greenhouse, you can cover them, you can water them, and if you cover it with a piece of cardboard, you can go away for 4 or 5 days and they'll be okay. And I've done that and it actually worked fine. They didn't dry out, so they actually germinated during that period of time. So I did that last year actually. That was the 1st of April when I started a whole table full of plants, as you'll see in our project pages on our website. It takes about 2 to 4 weeks to germinate seeds, depending on what kind of plants you're using or what kind of plants you're trying to grow. And some plants grow much quicker than others, like radish, brassica salad, rocket salad, like arugula, and you have other plants like tree seeds could take a year to germinate, depending on the stratification. It takes a winter, usually. It has to, for the outer layer to break down. You have to keep them, stratify them by putting them outside in the cold for the winter for 3 months, or even you can also do it by warm water, putting warm water into a glass with the seeds and leaving it, letting it cool down overnight. Not too hot, but just maybe 60 degrees or something like that. Leave it overnight and you'll find that the seeds have swollen, and you just separate the swollen ones from the ones that haven't swollen, and you put those back in the jar or into your glass and pour a bit more warm water on it and repeat the process. That's what we've done with tree seeds. It also works a treat with beans as well. I'd soak all the bigger seeds before you plant them, because it's going to speed up germination by about a week, because the seed soaks up the water before it starts to grow. Basically, it breaks down and it actually breaks open the outer shell then, where it germinates from. Yeah, so that's just a little tip. When are the seedlings ready for planting out into your garden, or ready for repotting? That's a good question. When they have filled out the rooting space in your tray. I'll show you a picture here of, or just a quick video of an oca plant. I know I have a little video there and I'll throw in, and you'll see that it has filled out the rooting space completely. So what we'll do is, when the plant is big enough, you can always put it into a pot, repot it. You want to repot the plants before the roots become pot bound, as in circle the pot. If it happens to be that you were a little bit, that you left them for too long, you have to take the roots, you untangle them with your hands. Don't worry about, you need to purposefully untangle them and damage them a little bit to encourage new growth. Sometimes you have to even cut them off with a secateurs in order to encourage them if they have grown too long. And you can repot it. I have a video on repotting plants actually. There's a really good one on that. I'll actually put a link for that in the description below, where you can basically repot small little plants grown in seed trays, and you can stick them into a 2-liter pot or a 1-liter pot. We usually start with 1-liter pots, but we always grow our vegetable seeds like marrows, pumpkins, or like winter squash and summer squash, zucchini or courgettes, as they're called around this part of the world. They are grown in 1-liter pots, and that really gives them a head start. And you can keep them indoors in the greenhouse where they're safer from the late frosts in May, and plant them out in late May. Keep an eye out for frost though, because if they get damaged, same as oca and yacon, If they get frost damage, same as your potatoes, you are going to get a slower release, and the plant's gonna get basically struck back by 2 or 3 weeks until it regrows. But you can keep a fleece over them. If I don't have any, actually, I've never used them before, but I must get some. If there is a late frost, you can cover them in a fleece before it happens. But in general, about 2 to 4 weeks for seedlings to grow from seed, and if you're growing cuttings, it can take about 6 to 8 weeks, and then you pot them on, and you know that they're ready to be potted when the seedlings grown from seed have filled out the rooting space inside the tray or in the pot, and you can plant them out then, or you can keep them in the greenhouse for another short while until you're ready to plant them out, until you've prepared your garden space. When are seedlings ready to be planted? I wanted to say that typically speaking, we grow any of the bigger vegetables in 1 litre pots, as I said earlier, including pumpkins especially, and any of the marrows, and any of the frost tender plants can be kept in the greenhouse for longer that way. So one last question, and then we're done. This is a shorter video, as I said. I don't even have time to go through too many more questions today, but that's the last question for the moment anyway, on plant propagation. If anyone has any questions on plant propagation, you can always ask us anyway. But this is mostly just to compound answers, and then give people the answers to common questions anyway, so that we don't have to repeat ourselves too often. But we don't mind. We have some videos on plant propagation and our workshops as well that we have ran last year, just to see. We had volunteers just who were learning how to start your own plants and how to pot them on. Basically everything we're talking about here, but just to practice it. If you're actually doing it and you've done a few dozen plants and each step of the way, you will actually learn. In half a day of a workshop, you'll have learned everything you need to know that it takes to grow your own plants for the rest of your life. It's like an essential skill to have. So Lorraine asked, what's the best time of the year to start rooting cuttings? So there is 3 different types of wood. There's softwood, which is the green wood. That is the new growth in the springtime until midsummer. In midsummer, it's a magical process that turns the green wood into woody wood, which is actually, it solidifies the cellulose. I'm not sure the process. Takes 6 weeks, and then you have semi-hardwood. And by the time the winter hits in December, it's hardwood. So basically, with most plants, like shrubs and bushes, berry bushes and that kind of thing, you can do cuttings any time of the year, but softwood is the easiest to root because it has the most hormones in it, and it's the easiest for the plant to break through the outer layer, basically. The harder the wood gets, the more woody, of course, but then the harder it is for the cambium layer to become exposed to the soil. But you can help that. You can help that process along by scraping the bark a little bit. We have a video on how to grow your own plants from softwood cuttings. There's a really good video there, and I think there's 9 tips actually in the video, and it's called scarification. When you scrape the bark all around your cutting, and you basically stick it into your growing medium and to root it, and just make sure you keep the growing medium moist but not too wet, and make sure that it's well drained. It has to have drainage so that it doesn't become anaerobic, and the roots don't, or the actual cuttings don't go rotten in the soil or in the growing medium. And you can do that any time of the year, really. You can do it with hardwood cuttings as well. Trees you can't really do it with, but most of the bushy plants it'll work with. But if there's less success rate, you could use a rooting hormone. We don't use rooting hormones at all. We don't really need them. We don't mind if the success rate is not as good. We just grow 100 cuttings, and if only 50 out of 100 grow, that's fine with us. Doesn't really cost you anything to do them if you can get the cuttings for free. But some stuff just roots by itself, like willow, currants, and gooseberries even I heard actually grow really easily from cuttings. Although they naturally tip layer, where they do the same thing that blackberries do. They just grow up and then down and into the ground and root there and grow a new plant from there. And you have, of course, the a lot of the other plants are grown. They're grown very easily from cuttings anyway. But semi-hardwood cuttings is a very is also a good one to use between midsummer, because you have a lot of plant material at that point. Just with one key difference between the softwood and semi-hardwood cuttings and the hardwood cuttings is that hardwood cuttings are in the winter and they're grown without leaves on them. So they actually grow the roots early on in the springtime when it gets warmer, and then they grow new leaves after the roots have established. But with any of the other types of cuttings, like softwood and semi-hardwood, that's during the growing season, and you have to make sure that they don't dry out. Make sure you strip away most of the leaves, and you only keep the top two leaves, and if they're too big, just cut them laterally, as in this way. Cut the leaf this way and not vertically, so that you have not too much moisture or evaporation from the leaf. Now, that's all there is to it. Thanks a million for watching and sticking through all of the video, and hopefully that answered some of your questions, and hopefully you can propagate your own plants now. And if you want to know more, have a look at our YouTube channel or on our Facebook videos. We have some videos on propagating plants in the nursery and the workshop as well, and we're going to run more of those workshops soon this year anyway, and but in more detail. So we're going to put more time into it. And next week's topic is going to be medicinal plants, traditional household medicines, uses for those, fresh and dried herbs and flowers, medicinal leaves and berries. So it's all about medicinal plants. What an exciting topic. You can make your own teas or tinctures and grow your own medicines in your own garden, and just like the way it used to be done some time ago. And believe it or not, pharmacies used to actually make medicine for you there and then and mix it and hand it out to you. So they used to actually use herbs, and that's what all the doctors before the 19th century used to do too. So if you have any questions at all with regards to medicinal plants, just wait until we make the announcement, or just ask underneath this video and I'll answer them for you in about a week's time when we get a chance to make the next video. Yeah, so that's all there is to it. Thanks a million for watching. Bye bye.